58 years on this earth, 22 of them carrying a badge. And the one moment that changed everything didn't happen in a dark alley or a drug house or a courtroom. It happened at a steakhouse in Concord, North Carolina, over a birthday dinner I paid for, while a man I never trusted grabbed my daughter's hair across a restaurant table and his mother cheered like it was a sporting event. My name is Harold Vance, retired Charlotte PD, Homicide Division, 22 years. I have seen things in this life that would make most people sleep with the lights on for a month. I have stood in rooms where terrible things happened, and I have kept my voice level and my hands steady because that is what the job required. I have looked at men across interview tables, men who did unspeakable things, and I did not flinch. Not once. So understand what it cost me to sit still in that restaurant booth. Everything. It cost me everything. Let me back up. My daughter Emily is 31 years old. She has her mother's eyes, dark brown, quick to laugh, quick to cry, and she has my stubbornness, which is either a gift or a curse depending on the day. She married Colin Bradshaw 4 years ago in a ceremony at a venue in Huntersville that cost more than my first car and my second car combined. I walked her down the aisle. I gave a toast. I meant every word of both. Colin Bradshaw is 34. He manages a logistics team at a supply company called Kessler Logistics, works out of their Concord office. Drives a truck that's slightly too large for a man who has never once hauled anything in it. He's got a handshake that's designed to impress and eyes that don't quite commit to whatever his mouth is saying. The first time I met him, I thought, this one practices his smile. I didn't say that to Emily. I was being generous, which, as we have already established, is a habit I need to work on. His mother is Patricia Bradshaw, 63 years old. She runs a licensed daycare out of her home in Matthews, a place called Little Sprouts, which serves approximately 18 children between the ages of 2 and 5. She's loud in the way that people mistake for warmth, opinionated in the way that people mistake for wisdom. And she has been inserting herself into Emily and Colin's marriage with both elbows since approximately the second week of their honeymoon. The three of us, me, Emily, Colin, and Patricia, were at Wentworth Steakhouse on Poplar Tent Road in Concord. Saturday evening, October 4th, 7:30 p.m. The occasion was Emily's birthday. She turned 31 that week. I made the reservation. I ordered the appetizers. I was already 2 glasses into a perfectly decent Cabernet when the argument started. It started the way their arguments always started. Quietly. Too quietly. The kind of quiet between two people who have had this conversation before and both know exactly how it ends. Colin had said something about Emily spending the weekend at my house the previous week, helping me clean out Diane's things, which is something I've been working on slowly, in pieces, for 2 years since she passed. Emily goes when she can. Colin apparently had opinions about this. Their voices stayed low. I was watching the way I always watch, the way 22 years of detective work wires you to watch. I saw Emily's posture change, shoulders in, chin down. I saw Colin's jaw tighten. I saw Patricia watching the whole thing with an expression I can only describe as interested. This is the moment right here. This is where everything turns. Colin reached across the table, not for her hand, not for the bread basket. He grabbed Emily's hair, a fistful at the base of her neck, and yanked hard enough that her head moved, hard enough that she made a sound, hard enough that 3 people at the table next to us turned to look. Emily's eyes filled immediately. She didn't cry out. She just went still, the way an animal goes still when it's been caught. And Patricia Bradshaw leaned back in her chair, crossed her arms, looked at her son with actual approval, and said, "That's how it's done." She needs to learn her place. 45 people in that restaurant, at least 15 of them within clear sightline of our table. Don't react. Don't give them what they want. Every instinct I have, every physical reflex honed by 2 decades of standing between people and the worst versions of themselves wanted to put my hands on Colin Bradshaw. I want to be honest about that. I'm not going to sit here and pretend I was calm from the jump. I was not calm. I was something very close to the opposite of calm. My hands were on the table and they were very still, and that stillness was doing a lot of work. But here is what 22 years of homicide investigation teaches you. The angriest response is almost never the most effective one. Men who lose control in critical moments hand power to the other side. I had watched it happen in interview rooms 100 times. The guilty party who stays composed walks out. The innocent party who screams gets charged. Colin Bradshaw was not going to benefit from my rage. My hand moved. Not to Colin. To my jacket pocket. I took out my phone, opened the camera, and pressed record. Colin was still looking at Emily. Patricia was still smiling. Neither of them registered the phone immediately. It was sitting on the table, screen facing them, casual as a glass of water. I let it run for 40 seconds. Colin's face, Emily's tears, all of it full and clear in the warm lighting of Wentworth's Steakhouse on Poplar Tent Road. Then I set the phone face down, picked up my napkin, folded it, and placed it on the table beside my plate. "Check, please!" Not loud, not angry. The voice I used to use when I was about to make an arrest, and I needed to keep everything calm until the cuffs were on. Colin blinked. "We haven't even gotten our entree. Check, please!" The server, a young woman named Nicole, who had been hovering nearby and had absolutely seen what happened, was at the table in under 30 seconds. I paid the bill, every dollar of it, including Colin's ribeye that never arrived. I stood up, looked at Emily. "Get your coat, baby." Emily looked at Colin, then at Patricia, then at me, and something in my face. I don't know what exactly, but something she'd seen before in 22 years of being my daughter made her pick up her coat. Colin started. "Wait, you can't just..." "Colin!" I turned to look at him for the first time since the whole thing started. Just looked. No expression. The interview room face. "Enjoy the rest of your evening." I walked my daughter out of that restaurant, into the parking lot, into my truck. She was shaking. I wasn't. We sat in that parking lot for 11 minutes. I know, because I watched the clock on the dashboard the way I used to watch clocks during long stakeouts. Not impatiently, just tracking. Emily didn't speak for the first 4 minutes. Then, "Dad, don't do anything. Already did something." She looked at me. "What did you do?" "I recorded it." A long pause. "Dad, Emily." My voice was level. "Has he done that before?" She looked out the passenger window. The parking lot of Wentworth's was busy. Couples heading in, a family leaving, a valet attendant pretending not to notice us sitting here. Not like that. Not in public. Not in public. The specific qualifier of someone who has been parsing the difference between acceptable and unacceptable for so long they don't remember what normal feels like. How long? She was quiet. "Emily, how long?" "About a year and a half." She said it to the window. It's not always physical. Mostly it's, he gets loud, says things. The hair thing. That's happened maybe. She stopped, swallowed. 4 times. 5 times. 5 times my daughter had someone grab her hair, and she had not told me, because she knows me. She knows what I would have done, and she was protecting him, or protecting me, or protecting some version of the marriage she still believed she could save. I didn't say any of that out loud. I just put my hand on hers. "Okay," I told her. "Here's what happens now. You're coming home with me tonight. Tomorrow morning, I'm going to make some calls. You don't have to do anything yet. Just let me work. Dad, I don't want this to get..." "Emily." I turned and looked at her. "He grabbed your hair in front of 40 people, and his mother told you that you needed to learn your place. It's already gotten there." One small, exhausted nod. The nod of a woman who has been very tired for about a year and a half and hasn't let herself admit it until right now. We drove to my house in Ballantyne. I made tea. She fell asleep on the couch under Diane's throw blanket. I sat at the kitchen table and looked at the video on my phone 4 times to make sure I had what I thought I had. I had it. Then I made 2 calls. The first was to Dale Osmond. Dale was my partner for 11 of my 22 years on the force. He retired 2 years before I did and now works security consulting out of Fort Mill. He picked up on the second ring because Dale Osmond has never once in his life let a call go to voicemail. "Harold, it's 11 o'clock. I've got video of Colin Bradshaw assaulting Emily at a restaurant tonight, witnessed by the whole room." A pause. "How bad?" "Hair pull. Clear. Visible. Her reaction is on camera." Another pause. Longer. "You file a report yet?" "Tomorrow morning. I wanted to call you first." "Good." Dale's voice shifted. The shift from friend to professional that I recognized because I have the same shift. "Who's your attorney contact?" "The family law guy, Gary Whitfield. Uptown. Call him before 9. He needs to know before Colin gets any legal advice of his own. Already planned." Dale. A pause. "You didn't touch him. Didn't need to." I could hear him nodding through the phone. "Good. That's good. Keep it that way." The second call I made was to Gary Whitfield's emergency line. Gary is a family law attorney I've known for 12 years. We met during a domestic case I worked in 2012, where his client needed protective documentation and my evidence helped secure it. He's thorough, careful, and he does not get surprised by much. Gary. Harold Vance. I need an emergency consultation first thing tomorrow. I have video evidence of assault on my daughter by her husband. Multiple public witnesses. The mother-in-law is on camera, encouraging it. A pause. What restaurant? Wentworth's on Poplar Tent. They have cameras. They do. Another pause. 8 a.m. tomorrow. Harold, my office. I sat at my kitchen table, listened to the sound of Emily breathing in the living room under Diane's blanket. I didn't know yet that the video on my phone was about to do more work than I could have predicted. I didn't know yet that Patricia Bradshaw's smile on camera was going to cost her something she'd spent 30 years building. And I didn't know yet that Colin Bradshaw, confident and untouchable in that steakhouse booth, was already 3 days from the worst week of his professional life. I made myself a cup of coffee, sat back down, and I started making a list. A detective doesn't solve a case by being the loudest person in the room. A detective solves a case by building something fact by fact, document by document, until the structure is so solid that the other side has nowhere to go. Colin Bradshaw thought Saturday night was a domestic argument that got a little out of hand. He thought Monday morning he'd be back in his office at Kessler Logistics, managing his logistics team, telling people what to do. He thought Patricia would call Emily on Tuesday and smooth things over the way she always did. A little pressure, a little guilt, a little, you know how he gets. He thought wrong on all three. Sunday, October 5th, I was at Gary Whitfield's office uptown at 8 on the nose. Gary had already pulled up Wentworth's Steakhouse on his laptop. Their website shows they have a full security camera system, which is standard for a restaurant at that price point. He'd also confirmed that North Carolina is a one-party consent state for recording, meaning my video was fully admissible. I put my phone on his desk and played the video. Gary watched it twice. He didn't react during the first viewing. During the second viewing, he paused it on Patricia's face, the exact moment she said what she said, and looked at me over the top of his reading glasses. Harold, this is a gift. I know. The mother on camera encouraging the assault is, I've been doing this 20 years. I've never had that on video. Neither have I. He leaned back. Okay, here's what we're building. Emergency protective order for Emily. I can file that today. Sunday filing through the duty judge. Criminal assault referral to Cabarrus County PD. The restaurant is in their jurisdiction. You'll need to file the report. He paused. What does Colin do for work? Kessler Logistics, Concord office. He manages a team of 8. Employment contract? I don't know the specifics. Most mid-sized logistics companies have conduct clauses. Behavior that brings the company into disrepute, domestic violence convictions, that kind of thing. I have a contact in HR consulting who can tell us how to approach that. He was already writing. What does the mother do? Runs a licensed daycare in Matthews. Little Sprouts, 18 kids, 2 to 5-year-olds. He looked up. She's a licensed child care provider. She is. And she's on video encouraging a man to physically harm a woman and telling that woman she needs to learn her place in front of a restaurant full of people. Gary put his pen down. Harold, do you understand what the North Carolina Division of Child Development and Early Education is going to do with this video? I had a pretty good idea. I wanted to hear him say it. Tell me, a licensed home daycare operator appearing on video to encourage domestic violence is a mandatory review situation. They will open a fitness investigation. They will look at her entire license history. 18 children, Harold. Their parents are going to be notified. The room was quiet for a moment. Build it all, I told him. Everything you just described. He picked up his pen again. How's Emily? She slept. She's scared, but she's steady. Does she want to proceed? She wants to protect the marriage. Gary nodded slowly. That's common. I worked domestic cases for 6 years before family law. I know every version of this. I looked at him directly. What I also know is that 1.5 years of documented incidents, which I am going to collect from her systematically this week, combined with this video, combined with the protective order, is going to give Emily options she doesn't think she has right now. I'm not forcing her hand. I'm building her a door. Gary looked at me for a moment. Then he nodded once, the nod of a man who has just decided he's all in. $800 a day, plus filing fees. I'll waive the consultation. Don't waive the consultation, Gary. I don't need favors. I need work. Do the work. Sunday afternoon, I drove to Cabarrus County Police Department and filed the assault report. The officer who took my statement, a young guy named Officer Marcus Lynn, maybe 26, with the careful manner of someone who takes their job seriously, watched the video twice, filled out every line of the report with the kind of thoroughness that told me he'd had good training. "Mr. Vance, you were a detective. This is strong." "I know. The public setting, the multiple potential witnesses, the video. This is strong. We'll reach out to Wentworth's for their security footage." "Are you requesting an arrest warrant?" "I'm requesting the full process. Let it follow the law." He nodded again. "We'll be in touch by Tuesday." On Monday morning, October 6th, I had a conversation with Emily that lasted 2 hours. I didn't push. I didn't present it as an interrogation. I made breakfast. Eggs, toast, the orange juice she's liked since she was 7. And I let her talk about the first time, about the way it had been escalating slowly enough that each incident by itself seemed survivable. She showed me her phone, texts going back 14 months that she'd never deleted. Colin's messages after the incidents, the apologies that were actually instructions, the affection that was actually surveillance, the "I love you, but you made me" messages that were actually the architecture of blame. I photographed every screen. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked her, not with accusation, just genuinely. She looked at her coffee cup. "Because I knew what you'd do. What did you think I'd do? Go after him. Emily." I waited until she looked up. "Look at what I did instead." She was quiet for a moment. Then something moved across her face. Not quite a smile, but something adjacent to it. "You took out your phone." "I took out my phone. And now you're building." She thought about that. "Is it going to work?" I poured her more orange juice. "But Emily, I need you to understand something. None of this matters if you go back to him. The protective order, the evidence, the attorney, all of it requires you to choose something different. I can build the door. I can't make you walk through it." She was quiet for a long time. "Mom would have hated him," she said finally. Quiet, almost to herself. "Your mother had excellent instincts." Wednesday, October 8th, 4 days after the restaurant, 3 things happened in this order. First, Gary Whitfield called at 9 a.m. to confirm the emergency protective order had been granted by the Cabarrus County duty judge that morning. Colin Bradshaw was legally prohibited from contacting or approaching Emily. He had been served at his Concord office at 8:45 a.m. by a process server. Gary told me Colin's expression when he received the papers was, according to the server, like someone had turned a light off in his face. Good. Second, Officer Marcus Lynn called at 10:30 to inform me that Cabarrus County PD had reviewed Wentworth's security footage, which confirmed and corroborated my phone video from a second angle, and had issued a warrant for Colin Bradshaw's arrest on misdemeanor battery charges. Colin turned himself in through his attorney by noon. He was processed, posted bail, and was out by 2 p.m. The charge was on his record. Third, at 3:15 p.m. on Wednesday, October 8th, I received a call from a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. The message was from a woman who identified herself as a licensing investigator with the North Carolina Division of Child Development and Early Education. They had received a complaint referral regarding Patricia Bradshaw and Little Sprouts Daycare in Matthews. They were opening a fitness review. I sat in my kitchen in Ballantyne and listened to that voicemail twice. I didn't call back immediately. I just sat there for a minute with my coffee and thought about Patricia Bradshaw leaning back in her chair at Wentworth's Steakhouse with her arms crossed and that expression on her face. That's how it's done. She needs to learn her place. 18 families in Matthews, North Carolina were about to get a letter. The most satisfying moment in any case, and I had a few hundred of them over 22 years, is not the arrest. It's not the conviction. It's the moment when the other side realizes the game ended 3 moves ago and they were the last ones to know. Colin Bradshaw had that moment on a Thursday morning in October, 4 days after he sat in a steakhouse booth and thought he was untouchable. He was placed on administrative leave from Kessler Logistics, pending their internal HR review at 10 a.m. on October 9th. I know this because Gary Whitfield's HR consulting contact had spoken with Kessler's legal department on Tuesday, not as a threat, not as a demand, simply as a notification that an employee had been arrested for battery, that video evidence existed, and that Kessler might want to be aware of the situation before it appeared in local news. Kessler's conduct policy, as it turned out, had exactly the clause that Gary had predicted. Colin was escorted from the building by 9 a.m. and told not to return until the review was complete. He called Patricia from the parking lot. I know this because Emily was CC'd on an email chain that Colin accidentally sent to her personal address. The old one he'd forgotten she still checked, in which he forwarded a message from his attorney containing a timeline of events. People under pressure make small, catastrophic errors. Colin was very much under pressure. Emily brought me the email on Thursday afternoon. She drove herself. That was new. 4 days ago, she'd been shaking in a restaurant parking lot. Now she was driving to her father's house with printed emails and a look on her face I recognized, the look of someone who has been handed evidence that confirms everything they suspected and is processing what it means to have been right all along. "He's been put on leave," she said, sitting down at my kitchen table. "I heard he's furious." I imagine. She looked at the email. "He's blaming me." His attorney said in here that the complainant's family initiated a coordinated campaign. She looked up. "That's us! That's us! Is that legal? What you did with his job and Patricia's daycare?" I reported a crime. I provided evidence to relevant licensing authorities. I retained a family law attorney to protect my daughter's legal rights. I looked at her. "All of that is exactly what you're supposed to do." She was quiet. "Patricia called me. What did she say?" "She said I needed to get my father under control." Emily paused, then a small, disbelieving laugh. "She said I was lucky. Colin loves me as much as he does." The room was quiet. "Emily," I kept my voice level. "What did you say back?" I hung up. She looked at me with an expression I can only describe as newly arrived, like someone who has driven a long way in the wrong direction and just figured out where they actually are. I hung up and I drove here. The following 2 weeks moved the way good investigative work moves, not dramatically, but steadily, each piece connecting to the next with the quiet logic of a case that's been built correctly. Gary Whitfield filed for divorce on Emily's behalf on Monday, October 13th. Irreconcilable differences, documented history of domestic violence, emergency protective order already in place. Colin's attorney filed a counter within 4 days. The language was aggressive, posturing, the legal equivalent of a man puffing up his chest because he has nothing else. Gary wasn't puffed up. Gary had the video, the police report, the arrest record, the text history, and 14 months of documented incidents that Emily and I had compiled together over 3 mornings at my kitchen table. 14 months written out in chronological order with dates and descriptions and photographs of 2 bruises she documented on her phone and never shown anyone until now. Colin's attorney went quiet after Gary sent the full documentation package. That particular silence has a specific sound. I've heard it before. It's the sound of a legal strategy being completely reconsidered. Patricia's situation developed on its own timeline. The North Carolina Division of Child Development and Early Education's fitness review was thorough. They interviewed Patricia. They reviewed the video, which had been submitted as part of the complaint referral. They interviewed staff. They contacted Wentworth's Steakhouse and confirmed the incident had been witnessed by restaurant employees and documented by security cameras. On October 22nd, 18 days after that birthday dinner, letters went out to the parents of all 18 children enrolled at Little Sprouts Daycare. The letters informed them that the facility was currently under a licensing fitness review and that parents had the right to request information about the process. I found out about the letters because one of the parents, a woman whose 4-year-old had been at Little Sprouts for 2 years, called the number on the letter, spoke to the licensing investigator, and then posted about the situation in a Matthews neighborhood Facebook group. By the following morning, 11 of the 18 families had withdrawn their children from the daycare pending the review's outcome. Little Sprouts, by the following week, had 7 children enrolled. Patricia Bradshaw called Emily 3 more times during that period. Emily didn't answer. On the 3rd call, Patricia left a voicemail. Emily played it for me once, then deleted it. The message was long. It contained the words, "Your father," approximately 11 times. It did not contain the words, "I'm sorry." Monday, October 27th, 23 days after the birthday dinner at Wentworth's, Colin Bradshaw accepted a settlement through his attorney. The terms: uncontested divorce, division of marital assets per North Carolina law, and a permanent restraining order to replace the emergency one. No custody dispute. They had no children. Colin received his share of the joint bank accounts and the furniture he brought into the marriage. Emily received the rest, the condo she'd furnished, and her freedom, which was worth considerably more than the furniture. Colin did not contest. Colin's attorney, after reviewing Gary Whitfield's full documentation package, had apparently advised his client in very clear terms that contesting this divorce in a North Carolina courtroom with that video, that police report, that arrest record, and 14 months of documented incidents was an idea that would not end in Colin's favor. Colin signed on a Monday morning. I know the exact time because Gary called me as soon as the counter signatures were confirmed. "Done," Gary said. "Filed. It's over, Harold." I was sitting in my kitchen in Ballantyne, coffee going, October light coming through the window, the specific gold of a Carolina fall morning that Diane always said was her favorite time of year. "How's the Kessler situation?" Their HR review concluded Friday. He resigned before they could complete the termination process. Same outcome, different paperwork. And Patricia? The fitness investigation has no set timeline, but losing 11 families in a week. That's going to be part of the record. Good! I drank my coffee. Thank you, Gary. Harold, you built this. That afternoon, Emily came over. She brought a bottle of wine, which is something she gets from Diane's side of the family. The belief that most significant moments should be marked with something decent in a glass. She also brought a plant, a small one in a terracotta pot that she set on my kitchen windowsill next to the coffee maker. What's that for? I asked. For your kitchen. It needed something living in it. She sat down. Is it really done? The divorce is filed and signed. The restraining order is permanent. Colin is no longer your legal concern. I looked at her. How do you feel? She thought about it honestly, the way she always does. Emily has never been a person who gives you the answer she thinks you want. Tired, sad, a little scared about what's next, a pause, and relieved. Like I've been carrying something for a year and a half and I put it down. She looked at the plant on the windowsill. Mom would have liked that plant. Your mother would have bought you 10 of them and made me carry them all in from the car. Emily laughed. The real kind. The kind that doesn't have anything underneath it. We sat in that kitchen for 2 hours, drinking the wine and talking about nothing consequential. About her job, which she likes. About Thanksgiving, which we're doing at her new place. Just us and Trevor from next door, who cooks better than either of us and doesn't mind being asked. About Diane's throw blanket, which Emily wants to keep, which is absolutely fine with me. At some point, she looked at me across the table with an expression that was half curious, half something harder to name. Dad, yeah, the night it happened. In the parking lot. You could have gone back in there. I could have. You didn't. She looked at me steadily. Why? Not because I didn't know the answer. I've known it since I was 23 years old, and a training officer named Sergeant Roy Finch told me something I have never forgotten. I thought about how to say it in a way that would actually land. Hitting Colin Bradshaw in a steakhouse would have felt good for about 45 seconds, I told her, and then I would have been arrested. And then the whole story becomes about me, not about you. And Colin walks. I picked up my glass. A retired cop's battery charge versus video evidence of assault. Which one helps my daughter? She nodded slowly. The video. The video. A pause. I picked up my phone instead of my fists because the phone was going to do more damage than my fists ever could. That's not patience. That's math. Emily was quiet for a moment. Then, Sergeant Instinct. Something like that. She raised her glass. I raised mine. To doing the math, she said. To doing the math, Colin Bradshaw, as of the end of October, was unemployed and living at his mother's house in Matthews. Patricia's daycare had 7 enrolled children and an open fitness review from the state. Gary Whitfield's paralegal sent me the finalized divorce decree on October 31st with a note that said simply, "Clean." I put the decree in a manila folder. Put the folder in my filing cabinet, between 2 other documents I've kept for years. Emily's birth certificate and her college diploma. Everything that matters goes in the same place. Then I went to the kitchen and watered the plant. It's doing well. For the record, Diane always said I had no business keeping anything alive.